All right, so get this. We're going deep today, like really deep.
Sounds good.
Into this amnesia case from Japan.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and
Amnesia cases are always so interesting.
I know, right?
Like, what happened? What's the story there?
Exactly. And get this, our main source is actually a transcript from a Chinese language video.
Whoa, okay, so we're going international this time.
We are, but don't worry, we'll break it all down for you.
That sounds fascinating, though. I mean, amnesia plus the whole international angle. It's like a puzzle with extra layers.
Exactly. And to make things even more interesting, a lot of this case actually played out on Japanese TV.
Wait, really?
Yeah, there's this show called Open Public Search.
I have never heard of that one.
Most people haven't. It's kind of like a reality TV show, but with a public service twist.
Okay, I'm intrigued. How does that work?
So basically, they feature people who have amnesia, lost their memories, and they try to help them find their families by broadcasting their stories.
Oh, wow, so they're using the power of television to try and solve these real-life mysteries.
Exactly. And apparently, Japan sees a surprisingly high number of amnesia cases every year. So this show is kind of a unique way to tap into the community's collective memory.
That's fascinating. It makes you wonder about the psychology behind it all, right? Like, what leads to such a high number of amnesia cases?
That's a whole other deep dive we could do someday.
Totally. But for today, let's focus on this particular case, the one from the Chinese video transcript. Right.
Right. So the mystery centers around a man who called himself Wada.
Oh, Wada. Okay.
And his story is...
Intense.
Intense is an understatement. So picture this. It's 2014 and Wada is found collapsed in a shopping mall bathroom.
Oh my God.
He's malnourished, disoriented, clearly not doing well. And to make things even more mysterious, he has absolutely no identification on him.
No wallet. No phone. Nothing.
There's literally no way to know who he is.
Exactly. It's like he just appeared out of thin air. Wow. That's eerie. Okay, so what happens next? They take him to the hospital.
They do. And as he starts to recover, he tells a story that's honestly pretty chilling. He claims he was held captive for 17 years.
17 years.
17 years. From the age of 4, he says he was never allowed to leave the house, never went to school. His only connection to the outside world was through television.
Oh my gosh, that's heartbreaking and terrifying all at the same time.
It really makes you question how such an experience would shape a person's perception of reality. To have your entire understanding of the world shaped by what you see on a screen.
Right. It's like being trapped in a bubble, completely cut off from any real human interaction.
And there were these specific details in Wada's account that add another layer of intrigue. He remembers that the house he was kept in had the name Wada written on the door.
So that's where he got the name from.
It seems that way. He also recalls being taken to the dentist once for severe tooth pain.
After years of isolation, that must have been a jarring experience.
Absolutely. And the way he escaped is just unbelievable. He said he walked almost 100 kilometers, surviving on whatever scraps of food and water he could find, until he finally collapsed from exhaustion.
100 kilometers? That's incredible. The human will to survive is so powerful.
It really is. So after Wada recovers, the search for answers intensifies. The police get involved, there are public appeals on the Open Public Search program, and of course the story starts to generate buzz online.
I can imagine a story like that is bound to capture people's attention.
It did. And it seems like everyone wanted to help this guy. He came across as articulate and normal, which made his story even more believable, especially compared to some of the other amnesia cases featured on the show.
Yeah, I can see how that would make his story stand out.
And out of all the tips and leads that came in, 2 stood out as particularly promising.
Okay, let's hear it. What were the leads?
So the first promising lead came from a dental nurse who called into the show.
Oh, interesting.
She remembered treating a young boy about 10 years prior who looked just like Wada. And the boy had been brought in by an older man, which lined up with Wada's story about being held captive.
That seems like a pretty strong connection, right? It fits the timeline of his alleged captivity.
It does. But then there's the second lead, which throws a bit of a wrench in things.
Uh-oh. What happened?
The convenience store owner contacted the show because he thought Wada looked familiar, like a former employee of his.
Hold on, so now we have conflicting information. If he was working at a convenience store, he couldn't have been confined for all those years.
Right, it's a real head-scratcher.
Yeah.
Is someone not telling the truth? Or is Wada's memory unreliable because of everything he's been through?
It's like a detective novel, trying to sort through all the clues and figure out who's who.
And just when you think things couldn't get more complicated, another layer gets added. A missing child case.
Wait, so we're going from amnesia to a possible abduction? This is getting more and more intriguing.
Right. So there's this 29-year-old cold case about a 4-year-old boy named Matsuoka who disappeared from his grandmother's house back in 1989.
1989, wow, that's a long time ago.
It is. And here's where things get a little strange.
Mm-hmm.
A psychic was actually involved in the original investigation.
Wait, hold on, a psychic. You mean like someone who claims to see the future or talk to spirits?
You got it. The psychic claimed the boy was still alive, but despite all their efforts, the police never found him.
So when Wada appears, people start thinking, maybe, just maybe, he could be this missing child.
Exactly. When people started seeing Wada on TV, the internet basically exploded with speculation. Could he be the missing Matsuoka? It was a question that gripped the nation.
It would be an incredible story if it turned out to be true.
It would, but of course we have to rely on evidence, not just speculation.
Right, so what happened? Did they do a DNA test?
They did.
Yeah.
They compared Wada's DNA with Matsuoka's father.
And what were the results?
The DNA test revealed that Wada was not Matsuoka.
Oh, so another dead end.
Not exactly. Just when you thought the twists and turns were over, something else happened during one of the open public search broadcasts. An older man came forward claiming to be Wada's father.
Whoa, are you serious? Out of the blue like that?
Yep, just like that.
And did they test his claim?
They did. And the DNA results suggested a potential biological link between the two.
So maybe Wada really did find his family after all.
It seems that way. He seemed to accept this outcome and left the show with the man.
So wait, the guy who claimed to be held captive for 17 years just walks off with this potential father, and there's no further investigation.
Unfortunately, that's exactly what happened. The police seemed to drop the case, and the mystery of those 17 years just vanished.
I bet that was frustrating for everyone following the case to be left with so many unanswered questions.
It was. But you know, this is the deep dive, and as you've probably guessed, there's always more to the story.
Oh, I knew there had to be another layer to this. Spill it. What else did they uncover?
Well, just when you thought things couldn't get any wilder, internet sleuths, those amazing digital detectives, threw a curveball into the mix.
Internet sleuths, I love those guys. They always seem to find something.
They do. They noticed a striking resemblance between Wada and a famous AKB-48 superfan named Kitazawa.
AKB-48, I'm not really familiar with them.
They're a massively popular idol group in Japan. Kind of like a girl group.
Oh, okay, like a Japanese pop group.
Exactly. An otaku refers to someone who has an obsessive interest in something, often anime or manga, but in Kitazawa's case, it was AKB-48.
So this Kitazawa guy, he was like super into this idol group.
Oh yeah, he was a bit of a legend in the otaku community, especially after he spent a small fortune voting for his favorite idol during a 2012 election.
Wait, voting? Like in an actual election?
Not a political election.
AKB-48 has a unique system where fans can vote for their favorite members, and those votes determine the lineup for their next single.
Oh wow, so this guy spent a ton of money just to make sure his favorite idol got a good spot on the next single. That's exactly what he did. And here's where it gets interesting. It turns out Kitazawa used to work at, you guessed it, a convenience store.
No way. That's the same job as that lead who thought he recognized Wada.
Right. It makes you wonder if Wada's whole story was fabricated.
If it was, why would he make up such an elaborate tale?
That's a great question. Was it a deliberate lie?
Mm-hmm.
Or could it be something else, like maybe a psychological break that led to some kind of selective amnesia? Or what if he actually was this famous otaku and wanted a fresh start, a way to escape his past life?
It's all so confusing,
Okay.
but incredibly interesting.
I know, right? This is why we love a good deep dive. It's like peeling back the layers of an onion. You never know what you're going to find.
And in this case, we're still peeling.
Exactly. We've got more to uncover, so stick with us.
Okay, so we're left with this huge question mark hanging over Wada's story.
Right. It's like, do we believe him? Do we not believe him? What really happened?
It's enough to make your head spin.
I know. And then on top of that, you have to think about the human element here. Yeah, I mean, regardless of whether his story is true or not, this is a guy who's clearly lost and searching for something.
Exactly, and whether he was a victim of a horrific crime or struggling with some deep psychological trauma that led to this, like, fictionalized version of his past, you gotta feel for him.
You really do. And then think about the people who were searching for him, especially the family of that missing boy, Matsuoka.
Oh, gosh, yeah. They must have felt so much hope when they heard about Wada, only to have it crushed by the DNA results.
I can't even imagine what that emotional roller coaster must have been like.
And then there's the older man who came forward as Wada's father.
Yeah, what was his story?
Right, like, did he genuinely believe Wada was his son? Or was there something else going on?
Ugh, it just feels like we're left with more questions than answers.
It does. Kind of like, I don't know, did the showrunners intentionally leave things open-ended? To keep people guessing?
Maybe. It certainly makes for compelling television.
But beyond the entertainment value, I think it raises some really deep questions like, what does it even mean to lose your identity?
Oh, okay. You're going deep now.
Well, think about it. To have no memory of your past, your family, your experiences.
Yeah, it's like, does a person even remain the same in that situation? Or do they become someone new?
I don't know. It's a fascinating concept. And in Wada's case, we see how that potential blank slate, if that's what it was, can be filled with both hope and despair.
So true. Like, on one hand, he had this chance to rebuild his life, make new connections, find purpose in work and learning.
Right. And he seemed to be embraced by the community at that rescue center.
He did. But on the other hand, there's always the possibility that he was robbed of the truth.
Denied the chance to confront his past and find real closure.
Ugh, it's just so bittersweet. And then, of course, there's that whole Kitazawa angle.
Right. If he was this famous otaku, what led him to that point?
Was it a conscious decision to escape his old life? Or was it more subconscious, a way to protect himself from something? We might never know for sure.
But it does speak to that allure of anonymity, shedding your past and starting over.
In a way, don't we all create narratives about ourselves? Like carefully crafting how we present ourselves to the world.
Absolutely. But what happens when that narrative breaks down, gets distorted, or just disappears completely?
I think that's the heart of Wada's story, isn't it?
It is. It's a reminder that identity is fragile, that it's constantly evolving and influenced by all these forces in our lives. It challenges us to think about how memory, truth, and perception all come together to create our stories.
Deep stuff, man.
Yeah, I know. It's not always about finding the answers, but about appreciating the questions and letting them spark our curiosity.
Totally. And in this case, the questions are really powerful. Like, what makes someone reinvent themselves so completely? How much of our identity is tied to our memories? And what happens when those memories are gone?
Exactly. And on a broader level, how do we deal with situations where the truth is just out of reach?
It's like, how do we reconcile conflicting accounts and navigate those gray areas of human experience?
It's all part of being human, existing in a world where certainty is often impossible.
Wada's story, while disturbing, gives us this amazing chance to dive into those questions.
And it reminds us that sometimes the most captivating mysteries are the ones that stay with us, the ones that keep us thinking long after the details fade away.
So true. And even with all the twists and turns, I still feel like something's missing.
Me too. Like we talked about the missing child, the potential father, and the superfan angle.
But what if none of those are true? What really happened during those 17 years?
Right. And if Wada's story about being held captive wasn't real, why did he make it up? Why create such a disturbing fabrication?
It's a puzzle, that's for sure.
It is. Maybe instead of trying to find a perfect solution, we should focus on the questions this case brings up.
About memory,
Right.
identity, and what truth even means.
Exactly. That's what makes this deep dive so valuable.
Wada's story, true or not, reminds us that everyone has their own hidden depths, their own stories waiting to be told.
And it shows how important it is to be empathetic and consider different perspectives, even when the truth is hard to find.
But hold on, before we wrap things up, we need to go back to that otaku connection for a minute.
Oh, yeah, you're right. We kind of glossed over it before, but that detail about Kitazawa, the AKB48 superfan, working at a convenience store, just like that earlier lead.
It can't just be a coincidence, can it?
I don't think so. It's definitely worth taking a closer look.
Okay, so let's dive back into that world of Japanese pop culture and see what we can uncover.
Sounds good to me. Lead the way.
Remember how we talked about otaku often describing someone with an obsessive interest in anime or manga? Well, for Kitazawa, that obsession was AKB48.
And that obsession led him to spend a crazy amount of money voting for his favorite idol in that 2012 election.
We're not talking about a casual fan here. This was someone who was deeply, deeply invested in this idol group.
Yeah, it's a level of fandom that most people probably can't relate to.
Right. So maybe we need to give our listener a bit more context about AKB48 and why someone might become so devoted to this group.
Definitely, AKB48 isn't your typical pop group. They have this super interactive relationship with their fans that's made them hugely successful in Japan.
Okay, I'm listening.
So imagine a group with Dozens of members, divided into smaller teams, who perform in their own theater almost every day.
Wow, that's a lot of shows.
Right. So fans have tons of opportunities to see their favorite members up close and personal.
I get it. It creates a sense of intimacy.
Exactly. And then there's the whole voting thing. AKB48 holds general elections where fans vote for their favorite members to determine the lineup for the next single.
So it actually makes sense that Kitazawa spent so much money trying to get his favorite idol a good spot in the lineup.
Yeah, in that context, it's not as crazy as it might seem at first glance.
Wow, it's amazing how fandom can become such a powerful force in people's lives.
It really is. And in Kitazawa's case, it seems like that passion might have led him down a path that crossed with Wada's story.
So if Wada is Kitazawa, that suggests he made a very deliberate choice to erase his old identity.
But why? What would push someone to such extremes?
Was it just a desire for a fresh start? Or was something darker at play?
These are the questions that will guide our investigation as we dig deeper into Kitazawa and his connection to AKB48.
Maybe by unraveling the mysteries of this superfan's past, we can finally shed some light on the truth behind Wada.
It's worth a shot.
Let's do it. Okay, so back to Kitazawa, the AKB48 superfan.
Right, let's see if there are any clues that might connect him to Wada.
I feel like we're putting together a puzzle, but with pieces from different boxes.
Totally. We have this captivating story of captivity, a missing child case that didn't pan out, and now this link to this whole pop culture phenomenon.
It's bizarre and strangely fitting, all at the same time.
It really is. And the more we dig into Kitazawa, the more we realize how little we know about him.
It's weird, right? Like, someone can be so famous within a specific community, but totally anonymous to everyone else.
It's how online communities work. You know, people can create these online personas that are very different from their real lives.
And with Kitazawa, everything seemed to revolve around AKB48.
It seems like he was totally immersed in that world. The shows, the merch, those crazy elections.
It was more than a hobby for him, it's his whole life.
And that kind of dedication can be both amazing and, well, kind of scary.
Right. Like, it's cool to be passionate about something, but there's always that risk of it taking over, of blurring the lines between fantasy and reality.
Exactly. And you have to wonder if that's what happened with Kitazawa.
Did his obsession with AKB48 push him to create this whole new identity as Wada?
It's possible. And think about the timing Kitazawa went on that spending spree during the 2012 AKB48 election.
2 years before Wada shows up.
Yeah, so maybe something happened around then, some kind of personal crisis or disillusionment with the fandom.
Like maybe he was overwhelmed by the pressure of his online persona or the financial burden of it all.
Or maybe he just wanted a clean slate, a chance to start over without all the baggage.
And what better way to do that than to become someone completely new? Someone with no past.
It's drastic, but it kind of makes sense if you're talking about someone struggling with their identity.
It fits with everything we've been talking about, this deep dive into the human psyche and all.
The need to escape, to shed your past and start fresh, it's a powerful thing.
Especially when it's amplified by something like fandom culture, with its intense emotions and potential for escapism.
So where does all this leave us? We've explored a lot of possibilities, but we still don't know the truth about Wada.
We've looked at the missing child case, the potential father, the superfan angle.
And while none of those have given us a definitive answer, they've definitely shown us how complex memory and identity really are.
This whole deep dive has taken us on quite a ride.
Through amnesia, abduction, pop culture, and the human mind.
And like any good mystery, we're left with more questions than answers.
Did Wada invent his whole story to escape his past?
Was he actually a victim searching for connection in a world he didn't understand?
Or is there something else going on that we haven't even considered?
We may never know for sure, but that's okay.
It is. I mean, the journey itself has been pretty amazing, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. We've learned so much about memory, about the impact of isolation, about Japanese fandom culture.
I think the biggest takeaway is that sometimes the most powerful stories are the ones that don't have easy answers.
The ones that make us question our assumptions and embrace the mystery.
So as we wrap up this episode, we want you to think about the questions Wada's story raises.
What makes someone reinvent themselves so completely?
How much of who we are is tied to our memories? What happens when those memories are gone?
And how do we make sense of the world when the truth is so hard to find?
These are questions that go way beyond this one case.
They're about what it means to be human.
We hope this deep dive has made you curious, challenged your thinking, and left you with a sense of wonder.
And until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep embracing the mysteries that life throws your way.
Because you never know what you might find.